I'm Mike Pounders, and welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers. Today is Saturday, the 15th of February. Hopefully everybody's staying dry and warm. I know here in Tennessee, we're experiencing a lot of rain and some more flooding, which is all that we need. Hopefully in your neck of the woods, it's nice and sunny. And like Chris Hammock said, about 82 down in Mexico. That would be perfect weather. I'm about over the winter, so I'm ready to bring on spring and get into baseball season. So I just want to say welcome to you all that are coming in to join us today. I apologize that we didn't have a meeting last week, but we have a full schedule lined up going through March. So I want to welcome you and hope that you all will continue to come back each week for our meetings. This week we have Mike Pounders that's going to be coming on with us here in a little bit. He's going to be talking about a homemade duplicating machine that he's going to provide the plans for, talk a little bit about how he takes clay and goes from clay into a rough out and how he's able to carve from there. So look forward to hearing about that. Before we get started with the meeting, though, I want to tell you about some of the classes that are coming up. Dave Stetson's got a class that starts on March the 1st. It's a cowboy with a bottle. I believe you can still sign up for that. Dave's on the meeting here today, and he's going to be doing our words of wisdom here in a few minutes. But if you're interested in signing up for that class, reach out to Dave and get signed up, get the materials that you need for that. And then Janet Cordell has a class that's coming up on May the 5th. It's Ellender's Widow. And you can find all of these things out on the workshops out on Woodcarving Academy. But again, you have to reach out to the instructor to get signed up. So reach out to Janet if you're interested in that class. Again, that starts May the 5th. As far as our meetings go, after this week, we're going to have Bruce Ankeny coming in next Saturday, the 22nd. He's going to be doing a demonstration. I also have one of his carvings that we're going to be auctioning off, probably throw in a Helvey knife into that auction. On the 1st of March, Joshua Walters from Windy Cape Studios is going to be coming in with us. He's going to be talking about making bases and going through his process on making bases for carvings. We also have one of his tool totes, which is a small tote that we're going to be auctioning off during that meeting. On the 8th of March, Rod Gatlin's going to be back in with us. He's going to be talking about the upcoming Charlotte show that's coming up in April. On the 15th of March, I'll be up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the Wonders in Wood show. That's the 50th anniversary wood carving show that they have up there in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's on March 15th and 16th. So if you get a chance and you're in their area, try to make plans to come up and be with us up there. There's going to be a lot of demonstrations. I think Joe Yu is the featured carver that's going to be there. There's going to be other CCA members there. It's going to be doing demonstrations. I'll be broadcasting live that Saturday, again, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, up there from the Lancaster, Pennsylvania show. So we look forward to seeing you up there. And again, if you can't make it, we'll be on live on this meeting. And then to round out March, we've got Mike Bloomquist coming back with us on the 22nd of March. And he's planning on doing a demonstration as well. So we look forward to that. I also want to remind you, coming up in September, and I talk about this every year, the Carving the Rockies show is coming up September 20th and 21st, Colorado Springs, Colorado. That's the show, the only caricature carving show that I know of that's out there. It's put on by the Caricature Carvers of America. And we'll be also doing live demos and stuff out there. So make sure if you can make plans to be out there, make plans now, get your reservations, get your airfare and everything to get out there. It's a great show, great opportunity to meet some carvers, buy some carvings from people that you may not be able to buy from otherwise, and really come out and participate in a great show. They're also going to be having classes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday after that show. You can go out on the Caricature Carvers of America website, go to the show information, and you can get signed up for those classes. I'll be doing some advertising on social media about that, but if you're interested in that, I would recommend you go ahead and get out there and get signed up. Those spots go quick, and once they're full, they're full. So we want to try to get everybody in those classes that want to participate. So go out and check that out. Before we get to Mike Pounders today, as usual, we're going to go over to Dave Stetson. Dave's got some words of wisdom for us. It's always inspirational, and then we'll get on with our meeting. So Dave, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks, Blake. Just a quick word for our buddy Bob Hershey. That's EALGEES. Oh, Eagles. No, so yeah, this is a quote from Oscar Wilde. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And you got to think about that for a minute, because it's hard to keep one in front of the other. But art appreciation improves our quality of life, makes us feel good. When we create art, we elevate our mood. We improve our ability to problem solve and open our minds to new ideas.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate that. Again, on with us today, we have Mike Pounders coming back. He's been on our meeting before in the past, and we're happy to have him back in with us today. Mike's going to talk to us again a little bit about a duplicator machine that he's making his own roughouts with. He's actually starting with his own clay model. So he's going to take us through that whole process and talk about that. Mike is definitely open for questions and comments. So make sure you unmute and ask those questions or throw them down in the chat. Me or Dave will read those off to him. But Mike, we're happy to have you. I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to you.
Glad to be here, guys. So I started making clay models, and it's kind of I'll try to make a long story short, but it was based on Chris Hammock used to sell these resin models of some of his carvings and stuff, like for his bar flies or bar buddies or whatever. And so I was so amazed at how they looked. It made a difference in my carving to have that to refer to go by when I was trying to carve the bar flies. Mine magically, I could measure how long the nose was, how far back it stuck, and do some things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. I bought quite a few of his resin castings for the bar flies. And so I was at the rendezvous, and I heard Chris talking to Rich Weatherby, and he said they were talking about Sculpey, and Rich was talking about he was going to do a Sculpey class and making models out of that. And I'd never even heard of it, but Sculpey or Super Sculpey is a polymer clay that you can bake in your oven. And Rich teaches some wonderful classes on it. It pretty much, I like it because it's not as squishy as regular clay. It doesn't get your hands all muddy like regular clay does. And you can bake it in the oven. You don't need a special $high kiln to cook it in or anything. So I started making my own models, and you can get quite complex with them. This is one that I did, and I've used this model with my roughout machine to carve it. You could take the pieces off that are more breakable and carve those separate to put those back on. You can see you've got a lot of flexibility in what you do. And here's one that I did last year. It was a Santa, and here's the carving that I did out of it. So you can see that you can get a pretty decent carving out of that. But the whole purpose is to get a rough out rather than have it completely duplicated and stuff. And so this guy named Matthias Wandel, and his website is woodgears.ca because he's in Canada. And on his website, there's a woodworking machinery section, and under that is a router copy carver. And he has an engineering background. He worked for BlackBerry and several other places, and he makes his living doing designs or doing videos and stuff like that. And these plans for this copy carver, I saw these and I thought they were great. Let me show you a little bit about this, and I'll talk about how you can build it. He sells the plans for $14. You pay him online. He lets you download a PDF, and it has the plans for doing it, and they're full-size plans. The pieces you need for that, this is, there's like a 3/4 inch pipe that goes across the middle that the pieces ride on. There's a roller skate bearings, like it takes about 11 of those. You can buy those for about $20. There's some bolts and nuts and stuff, washers that you need. The main expense is like a palm router, and I've got a rigid one here. But when you make this, it's the rest of it is pretty much dimensional lumber, 2x4s, 2x6s. So this is made in two separate pieces here, and I'll show you. Well, it comes apart on two separate pieces. So this piece lifts off from the base piece, which is basically some 2x4 and 2x6s down there. And this piece is made out of 2x4s with some bearings and stuff on it. The bottom piece is actually heavier than this piece here. So I'll take this clamp off that I've got here that keeps me from smashing my fingers when I pick it up. This is an actual 4-axis machine. It goes forward, it goes side to side, it tilts up and down, and so it lets you carve things pretty easily. It's like using a router. I'll go ahead and plug this in. Up a little bit. A little bit about this. So basically, this middle section here is the most complex piece. It's got two arms that are specifically cut so that it will hold a counterweight here in the back. That's just a simple box. It has a hole drilled through it here that the pipe goes through, and just any kind of pipe. You can use plumbing pipe if you want to, but I think this is just electrical. It has a couple of bearings up here that rides on top of it, and then it's got one here on the backside that rides under the bottom that holds it up. So this doesn't lift off very easily. You could make it to take off. The router, well, there's a little bar that goes through here that this front piece that the router goes on, this rotates on that. It's just clamped together there with wood screws holding it together. The router itself, this is a rigid palm router. In his plans, he uses a Bosch. And I like the rigid a little better because it's got a button up on top. So you can turn it off just by slapping on that. And that's one of the features. It also has an LED light down here and stuff like that. So he takes you through. He's got two videos that go with it, two parts. One's about 9 minutes, one's about 10 minutes. That talks about how he cuts everything out and where you need to make sure you're drilling accurate. You'll need a drill press and a table saw and a bandsaw and normal woodworking kind of stuff. But part of it is in making your adjustments to this so that it's this bar here, the little bar has to be parallel with the big bar that everything rides on. And you also have to shim some things up so that this is in the correct plane and everything across there. Every little adjustment that you can make like that makes it more accurate in what it does. The bits themselves, when you get them, there's some adjustments you want to make so that they are the same height from the top. They rest the same so that when you start cutting on something that it's at the same height and stuff like that. But here's something that I did that is a little bit different from his because I'm not wanting to make an exact duplicate. I'm wanting to leave wood on there so that it is more of a rough out. I want to leave enough wood that I can carve it and get it to be accurate instead of trying to just make the design myself. These pieces here on the side, you can make these a different length. This is can affect on how long a piece that you could do in here. You could do like rifle stocks if you had it extended a little bit further. But right now it's pretty wide as far as what you can do. One of the adjustments that I've made and that I've added to it that we'll talk about in a little bit is having this fence and how I made some of the adjustments here to make sure that I've got things centered up. But with it just like this, he goes through and talks about making some copies. I think he does like a wrench and a phone. And so here's a crescent wrench that I did. And that's the same one he demos there, and you have to do a little bit of carving on it to get it to look so nice and everything. But this was out of just a flat piece of plywood. He took the wrench and he screwed the wrench down to one side, the stylus side, and then on the bit side, he had a just flat piece of wood here. The only problem with this is it looks good from one side. It's flat on the other side. And it's like, well, that's a problem for me for doing some kinds of roughouts. It's not so bad if you're doing like a Santa ornament that's already flat on one side. You can put that down in a piece of wood and you can copy that pretty easy. Or I'll do like refrigerator magnets and stuff that are again flat on one side, and you can get pretty good results from it. Again, we're leaving some meat on there so we can rough it out and have something. And I'll show you what's on there. But I got to thinking that I don't want to do just Santa ornaments. I don't want to do just things that are flat on one side. I want to do something that's more three-dimensional. So I've looked at some different duplicator things and stuff, and I've seen all the ones that you can occasionally find them for sale, but they're kind of expensive, like $600, $1,000, different ones and stuff, and made out of metal, and they're usually someplace too far for me to drive and get it, and too expensive to ship it and stuff. But those are very good machines and stuff. But I've got maybe $150 in this, so it was very efficient or cost effective to do it. Except I needed some way that I could do something different. So I've seen some duplicators, professional duplicators, that they will lay the workpiece out horizontal instead of being up and down like this and setting the piece in there and trying to go around it. They will turn it on its side horizontal, and then they typically will have some mechanism that will rotate it as you're duplicating the piece. And I was like, well, I don't think I can build that. That's typically made out of metal. It may have a chain drive, or it may be rack and pinion, or something to rotate that. And I was trying to think of, well, how could I do that? So I came up with this idea to modify this and added just this fence here. On his original machine, he decided he didn't even want the plywood base. He would just bolt these rails, or he would just clamp these rails down to a piece of plywood or to a table saw and stuff, and use it like that. So it took up even less room. But I've got mine screwed down to a piece of plywood here. And then when I added this fence, I added this other piece so that I could adjust it and see how it worked. But it's worked so well that I've just left it like this. So basically on this fence here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I've drawn some lines that are center lines for my bit and for my follower. These are exactly 12 inches apart from the center of this bit to the center of this follower here. And so the center line lets me know, and you can tell by looking at it, there's about a this is not as far down as the follower. So that's going to leave me some extra wood on my rough out because it's not as cutting as deep. And this follower is also, I added a piece of PVC pipe to it. So it's a little bit thicker than the 1/2 inch bit that I've got in here. So I'm leaving some extra meat on my roughouts when I carve them. This center line on this fence, what you do with that is you can take, this is a center finder for lathe work and stuff. So I can lay that on a square piece of wood and I can take a pencil and I can draw a line across that and a line from the other corner. And I've got the exact center of this piece of wood. What I do then is I take a T-square, and as long as I go right in the center of that mark there, I can draw, and that'll give me the center line on each edge, and then the center line on each end here. Once I've got those center lines laid out, I'll mount this in my carve here. Now I've got my center line marked here on this, so I will take that. Now usually if I don't have a hole pre-drilled, I've got some holes drilled over here that are also on that center line. And all it takes and because this block is flat on my table here, it's holding it pretty secure. Now this is my cutout from the pattern that I did from turning this sideways and tracing around it with a pencil. This is what my cutout looks like. So the it kind of looks like ET. So this is what it will look like after I've roughed it out. More like you're used to seeing. You can see the shape of the hat and some different things like that. So this one you can see a few places where it didn't get. That's not the duplicator's fault. That's because I didn't cut the pattern out thick enough. I could have just left a square block of wood. But again, like I said, I'm lazy. I like to cut off as much as I can, so there's less to do. Now it's going to take maybe about 30 minutes or so, maybe a little less to rough this out, but I'm assuming y'all will see a demo of this. I've got my center lines marked here on this. So I will line that up. And I'll clamp this so it doesn't move. When I put my screw in, that's the critical part, is that you want to have the center lines all lined up. And so when you move them, this is just a 1/2 inch screw here. So, or 1.25 inch screw. So it will not go all the way through my 3/4 inch wood, but that's got it set now. Now, I don't know, I might should mute it so that
No, you don't have to. There's a noise canceling feature on Zoom.
All right, well, y'all enjoy.
Just go to town.
When he does it, he suggests that you only hold the following, this side over here. He doesn't recommend that you hold this side over here. I'm used to holding my routers with 2 hands. I'm not used to using 1 hand, so I'm going to hold on to it. And here we go. So that's one side. And each one goes, or each other subsequent side goes a little quicker. Because there's not as much wood to take off. Another advantage of this fence is that as you watch his videos, you'll see that he kicks a lot of sawdust out in his lap. So I kind of like having the fence so that it pitches some of that stuff.
Hey, Mike, there's a question in the chat. What kind of specific bit do you use for this routing process?
It's a 1/2-inch carbide bit. Yeah. And a lot of that is probably because that's what I have. In his drawing, he has one that's a box, a core box bit, one of those that's round, and he has a V bit. Now those might get you a lot closer as far as duplicating it, but I've had good results with this and have not seen any need to change it. Because again, I'm not trying to duplicate it. I'm just trying to make me a roughhout. And on the other side here.
And there's another question in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and answer. Somebody's asking at the end if you'll have instructions on how to make one. You said before you can find the directions on woodgears.ca.
Yep, woodgears.ca under the woodworking machinery. And it's the router Copy Carver that has a video of him, 2 videos of him making the thing. And it has a link to where you can buy the plans from him. And again, this is his plan. This is the only change I've made is adding the fence, which is basically just a 90-degree fence. And once I found the center lines of my bit and my follower and stuff, I just marked that on all the sides of the fence. And I've drilled a couple of holes for different sizes of wood and stuff like that. So your center lines could be moved around as long as they're 12 inches apart. I mean, I could move them different places on this fence and drill bigger holes or more holes. But I found that the ones that I've drilled so far seem to work. I have to drill a few extra holes and stuff, but it works pretty good.
And somebody said you're focusing more on following your carving versus watching your router, right? So you're really just making sure you're following what you're duplicating.
Yes, and the follower itself keeps you from getting too far out. Now I'm watching the little bit of the router because I'm wanting to take off those big corners and stuff first.
Right.
Got most of that knocked off, and I'm using this follower mainly to go around my clay model and making sure I'm touching every place there. And when I get it out, you'll see it's not going to be perfect. You may think it's, oh well, that's a horrible rough out, but it's more roughed out than what it was when I started. So that's the main thing I'm getting for. And it has a lot of the major landmarks, so I could say, okay, here's where the edge of the hat is. Here's where the top of the head is. I just need to take off these rough out marks and stuff and get it smooth and carve it like you would any other rough out.
And one other question, is it a straight bit or a spiral bit that you're using?
This is a straight bit. If I'd had like an end mill bit or something like that was carbide, yeah, I might have used something like that. If I'd had a V bit, I think a V bit would probably follow it too close for my purposes and stuff. A ball bit might be someplace that does a better job than a straight bit, but I think I had a 1/2-inch straight bit. It was easy for me to find. I'm not sure where I could get a round ball bit that's big enough like he was showing. If you were going to do signs and stuff with it, a V bit might be better for it. And he's got some other machines too. He's got a panel router and stuff for making joints. He's got some kind of sign router that he used for tracing large letters and making smaller sign letters and stuff like that. It's more like a it's not a panel router, but it works kind of like a pantograph does. So he's a pretty clever guy in what he's invented and did some things. But no, I'm just using a plain old straight carbide bit. It's probably due to be replaced, but it will cut a flat end, and it cuts on the end and it'll cut on the sides and stuff like that. So let's get the other side, or this other side going here. So basically, you're just going back and forth and up and down and whichever way until it stops cutting wood. And then it's time to turn it over and do the other side. But it's already looking, I like to do the two sides before I do the back, but it's
Another question, Mike, have you ever had it grab and kick back the router?
no, because I take very small cuts with the router, watching over this side here. I'm not worried about where the follower is going to go. It's
Right.
to follow it and stuff. So I take very small cuts, and that's also why I like holding it with two hands. If it seems like it's getting out of control, if I'm taking too much off or trying to take too big a bite, then I'll shut it off. But I've never scared myself with it, and I'm pretty scared easily. So I would have stopped it if I felt unsafe. But again, if I got both hands on it, I'm probably not going to let go of it, or I'll pick it up out of the wood and uh, stop cutting on it then. And it's a palm router. It's got some power and stuff to it, but it ain't like a big router. And the only pain when you're first doing one is having to put the clamp on and clamp it down, but I have messed up one or two when I didn't have it clamped good or screwed down good, so that either my model moved or my piece moved. You don't want that to happen because it'll definitely cut too much off from. Okay. One more side in the back and we'll be done. Goes a lot quicker on each subsequent side. It won't take very long because we've cut a lot of the back off already. You usually find just a little bit in different areas that it'll still cut off a little bit. And we'll have something that looks like a rough out here.
While you're doing that, Mike, I'll ask you a few more questions here.
Sure.
One person wants to know if you could use a Dremel instead of the router.
I don't think it's got enough power.
Okay.
You could. I think it would take too long. I got this one as a little over $100 on sale at Home Depot. So, but I don't think a Dremel would be powerful enough to do it.
And then another person wants to know, is it a rigid palm router that's a 5.5 amp? Is that what it is?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so they want to know if any brand would work as long as you adjust center and the reach bit to make sure they match up.
Yeah, because he used a Bosch. He said, basically he's got the center point marked, and you can mark the center point wherever you want to, but then he just drew a circle the size of the body of the router and cut out in it. And this one actually has a notch in the front that I had to cut out. So it's not too difficult to do, to figure out to use whatever router you got. But the smaller one seems easier to control. I've actually got a little palm router that I may have paid $75 for, that had like that's got separate handles, T handles and stuff like that, and was cheaper even than this, but it doesn't have light. And I like this because it's got an off switch on top. You could use a foot switch or whatever, but I'm always where I like to be able to shut things off if I'm in a hurry and without having to mess with it too much. Yeah, that will be the most expensive part. Of course, if you've got something already, it certainly wouldn't hurt. If it was me, I would have used something that I already had, but any excuse to buy a new tool is sometimes, well, you got to do something with all this money you're making from selling your carvings and stuff. You got to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Another question, they want to know how long a bit lasts. Probably lasts for a while, doesn't it?
This one has lasted me about 7 or 8 years.
There you go.
And so I'm not cutting a lot of hardwood and stuff in it. I'm just knocking corners off of stuff. And so it's lasted me that long. I think about buying one every now and then, and it's like, man, they're $20, or it's like I'm not sure I want to spend my money on that. But
Right. And then you're running at a speed at about 4 or 5. Are you doing it about middle speed or
it's on 6 is what it says.
on 6? Okay.
And it looks like it goes up to 7 or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's all I know. I found something that worked and I haven't changed it a whole lot. So let's get this back part finished and we'll see what it looks like.
So for your clay model there, Mike, are you building an armature out from the plywood before you put your clay on there?
If it's something that needs to hold it up, yeah. Like this guy, he had a little bit of a lean to his neck, so I was wanting a lean. So I had I screwed or drilled a hole in the plywood and put a piece of dowel sticking up that went through his neck and everything. But it wasn't right. It was in the exact center of the plywood. So when I got to looking at it, it's like, well, I'll need a bigger piece of wood if I leave it like that. So after I cooked it, it just comes off of the wood and you can take the dowel out, and I cut it off flat. And so it's still got the dowel in there for support, but the dowel doesn't go into the plywood. I just used 5-minute epoxy and glued it down in. So now it fits into a 3x3 piece of wood perfectly. It gives me a little room on each side, not so much on the back, but it fits in there good. So here's my rough out. Lovely, huh? I don't know. I think I like the other one I did better. But if you look at it, you can kind of see, well, there's an ear and there's the hat and stuff like that. And you can see it's a little bigger than what I've got. So I've got some room to carve stuff out. I'm not cheating by making an exact copy using a router of my stuff. I'm making just a rough out. So you can kind of see where the nose is. You can kind of see where the ears and stuff are, how the hat's shaped out. This one looked a little better, I think. Now, if I hadn't cut this out at all, it would probably look even better closer to this. But that's enough room that I can work with that and cut stuff out. Like I said, I don't like, maybe that's why my bit has lasted so long, is I'm not trying to chunk it out of a big square block of wood. I'm cutting out as much as I can with the bandsaw. But what I'm really proud of with this fence is, if you look up here, I don't have hardly any sawdust on my lap. Most of it's up here on this table behind this fence. So my wife appreciates that when it comes to cleaning up. So that's basically how this works. The offsetting and stuff gives you some extra wood to work with there. I got plenty of room down here on the neck to carve out. He's got a pretty skinny neck. I got room to carve the nose out. I can see where the nose is. I can see where his ear is, the rim of the hat. But I got enough going there, as opposed to just have that out, that I can cut the stuff out. Yeah, it took a little to build something like this, but this gets me closer. I got a model. I got a rough out. I can get pretty darn close to cutting this out, like I did with these other pieces that I carved out. So that's but it does what I intended it to. And you can experiment with different bits and stuff, but the straight bit is easy to adjust and to do, but he shows it using a round bit, one that's kind of a ball shape on the end, like a core box bit. But again, the trick is where do you get one big enough? And 1/2 inch carbide bits are pretty common to get, and it does a decent job. It does a pretty good rough out. And again, it's not, you're going to have to carve on it to make it look like your thing, but it's knocked off a lot of the extra wood. You got some better ideas of where to start from and stuff, instead of just using a cutout. Sometimes cutouts get kind of wild on how they come out, as far as being able to tell exactly how that relates to your carving and stuff. But
Mike, would it work the same if you've carved a piece and you want to make a rough out from a carved piece? It'd work the same as using clay, right?
sure,
Yeah.
sure, yeah. And it is probably less likely. I won't say it probably wouldn't mess up as much as if you send it off to somebody to make you a rough out, because I'm a little gentler with mine in that. But yes, you could, from your own carving, your own piece of wood and stuff like that. You certainly could. It helps if you've got it glued to a base. If you've got a wooden base that's square or something like that, so that you can make your registration marks and register that with your fence, because that's the trick. That's the Whether you're doing it from a pattern or something like that. I had somebody ask me at the last carving meeting, or no, it was at a plate class I was talking about, and he said, I have these nice patterns in the magazines and stuff, but it doesn't come out right, and it's because you gotta find your center line, and a lot of times they don't have that center line on those patterns and stuff in there, but you got to have the center line on the side somehow to line up with the center line on the front, so that you're using the same thing. You got to on patterns, you just have to kind of guess, but if you glue it to a piece of wood that's got some right angle corners, you can measure, you can find out where the centerpiece of the block of wood is, and then therefore where the center line is on each side, whether it's a square piece of wood or whether it's a rectangular piece of wood.
So one other question, and you may not have thought this far out. Do you have an estimated cost per rough out over the life of the setup? And is there a benefit to doing your own as compared to sending them off to a duplicator?
Send them off to have them duplicated is certainly easier, because you don't have to have a bandsaw, you don't have to have table saw, you don't have to have a drill press. You don't have to have a router and all this other stuff like that. Depending on how big your carving is and how many copies you get, it can be cheaper to just send them off and have Heineke do them. Heineke used to do 8 was the smallest amount they could do. Now, here's something you may not realize, that it actually takes the same amount of labor, their labor, for them to do 8 as it would for them to do 24. So you get a per unit break if you get more of them done. I think the last ones I had is maybe $150, something like that, for 24 copies. So yeah, there you go. That's a lot cheaper than building this machine or having to buy all this other stuff and do that. And you get 24 copies, so you get a lot of practice. Well, I was telling them before we started here, when I make one of these, a rough out of my own, it's my design, and then I get to learn, can I carve this and make it look like this? And if I can, it's like, oh, okay, well, I can carve that. And I like the way it looks when I carve it. Sometimes I'm not so sure whether I like them or not. If I like it a lot and I think somebody else might like it, then I'll send it off. I'll send my wooden piece off and have them make roughouts from that. And usually I buy 24 at a time now because that's a better price break. If I'm going to teach classes in it, then I've got plenty for teaching a class. If I'm just going to sell it by itself, then 24 is a good number. I can afford to spend that. Then when I get the roughouts back from them, I get to see if I can carve it from their roughouts. So that gives me 2 practice sessions on carving the same thing. If I can carve it twice in a row and make it look the same from my roughout or from their roughout, well, then I figure, well, maybe I could teach a class on this. If I've carved 2 more than anybody in my class has. So I kind of look at it like that. But yes, I have considered that it is cheaper sometimes. And I the only gotcha is if I send off a clay piece, is I'm not going to get it back because they're going to break it, or they're going to have to coat it with epoxy and glue pieces to it and everything so that they can make a rough out directly from the clay. I don't think they really like doing that too much, and I can't blame them a bit. And then you don't have a go by to go by unless you took some pictures and stuff. So I, it's an iffy thing. If you can, I felt like it was worth it for me in that first I could see if I can actually carve it like I did the clay. Clay, you can fix a lot of things with clay that you can't fix if you do a wood carving. So I want to make sure that my carving looks like the clay piece so that I know in my mind that I can do it. And then, okay, do I like it enough after I've did it to send it off? I've looked at this Santa Claus here, and I like the whole idea. It's got a cute name, Sacked Out Santa, but I hadn't sent it off yet because I don't know if I like it enough that I want to have a rough out made out of it. I don't know if I like it enough to teach a class on it. If I'm going to pay somebody to do a rough out, I got to be pretty sure that somebody's going to like it enough that they're going to buy at least half of them. So at least so I break even. Of course, then I got lots of extra wood that if it gets cold here in Arkansas, I got something I can use for firewood. But I've got a box full of roughouts that that I wasn't able to sell. Well, I won't say that. I'm slowly selling them. I didn't sell them as fast as I would have liked to, so they've kind of sat around for a while, and now I'm starting to carve other things out of them, or reducing my price and everything to just because I'm tired of looking at them. But others, they sell real quick. The little goldfish that I did, man, I sold a ton of those. Guess what? It was such a, and I did it out of clay, but I didn't do a rough out of it. Once I did the cutout tracing around the outline of the clay pattern, it was so easy just to cut that out and carve it itself. It wasn't real big. Whereas some things they're a little more complex. So
Another question, Mike. They're wanting to know if you have any carvings around that you've done outside the ones you've showed that you can show us here today. And then who's your inspiration as far as carvings go?
oh, that's a Dave Stetson and Chris Hammock. Are they still and Bob Hershey?
They're all on. Yep.
Blake Lunsford too. Um, you know, I've been inspired by a lot of people. I love Chris's humor and have always loved all of his carvings. Him and Phil Bishop and Vicky Bishop, they crack me up. The things that they do. A lot of just plain carving that Dave and others do. That there are a lot of inspirations. Harold Enlow, man, I've never seen a Harold Enlow carving I didn't love, and had fortunate enough to carve a little bit with him. The just different people that I think are big influences and stuff. I mean, everybody that I've carved with, I try to copy something from just about everybody. I've carved a lot with Roger Stiegel. He's a member of our club here. Used to carve a lot with him, but he's so busy traveling, we don't get to see him much anymore. Janet Cordell and Adina Huckins. Man, I started out trying to carve pretty women and learned real quick that I carved some pretty homely women. Here's an example of a homely woman. She looks real good from the back. I call this one of my butterface carvings. Everything looks good, butterface. And so I said, man, that sucks. So I'm going to take lessons. And I knew who Janet was because one of the first carving magazines had a picture of that Eleanor's window thing that she's teaching the lesson on. That was in Wood Carving Illustrated. And it's like, well, I know who she is. She's from Arkansas. I could drive to Fayetteville and carve with her. Well, she wasn't teaching, but Adina Huckins was, and that's her sister. And that was with Steve Brown had a thing. It wasn't like the rendezvous. This was you carved a week with the same person each day. And they did that up at a campground up by War Eagle Mills. And so I learned how to sharpen tools from Adina Huckins. Still working on the women's faces, but I do better than what I was doing before. But other people there, that's where I met a guy that was in the carving club here in Central Arkansas. I could not get in touch with them, and I ran into the guy up there carving with them and got in touch with him. There's so many people, just about everybody I've carved with, at the Renegade and stuff like that. Gary Phelan, geez, I just love his stuff. Different people, Mark Akers. You can name just about anybody, and it's like, yeah, I like their stuff. I like Sarah Barraclaw's stuff too. What was the question?
They were also wanting to know if you had any carvings around that you could show, like finished stuff.
Oh, sure. Let's see here. But
That's a huge piece.
it is. It was a lot of work. 3 or 4 month piece there, but that was carved from a chunk of wood. That was not a cutout, rough out, anything. This was in a class from I took with Janet Cordell, and what I told her was I didn't want to carve a pretty woman. I wanted to carve something original, something that had an impact on you, but that when people looked at it, they wouldn't say, "Oh, you took a class with Janet Cordell." I wanted something that was as original as I could make it. And so I think I got the ears from like Vic Hood class and stuff like that. But I like doing something different, and I've carved quite a few times with them. And
Hey, Mike,
yeah,
that woman could make an impact on you.
it could. She's kind of scary looking. My wife to keep her upstairs, but it kind of reminds me of my grandmother in some ways. And
She looks like a grandmother.
yeah, yeah, could have been. This was a Kevin Applegate rough out and stuff. Love me some Kevin Applegate. Even if I'm not carving with him, if I can just sit there and listen to him make jokes and stuff and talk about other people, I think that's worth the price of admission. Let's see, what else do I have? Do I have anything up here?
We have another question. Do you sell your roughouts anywhere, or do they just need to reach out to you if they're interested in something?
You can usually get in touch with me on Facebook. I can't remember if I still have them. My Facebook page has a link to whatever I've got for sale as far as um, ornaments or different things, and I think it's on my Facebook page for Cheddar Up is the closest I've got to a website, or they can just email me or post something on Facebook if they're interested in some. I've got a few of the flat Santa ornaments on the back. I've got some of the goldfish and some other things like that. But you know, I enjoy teaching people how to carve and doing stuff. I'm not so sure I enjoy selling roughouts. It's kind of a pain to box them up and ship them off and do things like that. And if I'm not having, like they say about carving, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. So I'm all about having fun. But if I've got something and somebody wants to buy it, yeah, I'll sell it. I've even got a few carvings still left, but I've got some that I just can't part with, or you know, I jacked the price up so much that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get anybody to buy them, which is fine because I like some of my stuff and like to hang on it, and some of it it's you know I had the fun in carving it. I'll sell it. This I had fun carving this with Kevin, and I wasn't brave enough to paint it all black first like he does with some of his, and then paint on top of it. But I like the carving and hadn't been able to part with it yet. So it's and I've got a ton of stuff downstairs, but I'm not going to make my daughter run downstairs and get all that stuff. So.
All right. We're coming up on about 10 after 4. Does anybody else have any other questions for Mike today? Looks like the goldfish is pretty popular. They're asking about that. So somebody's told them to Google it.
Yeah, it is one of my most popular roughouts and stuff. And I still love carving it. I still like thinking of different things to do. Oh, speak of the devil. So that's a pretty simple rough out to do, and I've did it different things. I've had him drinking out of a red Dixie cup and called it Party Animal and stuff, and I've had him drinking out of a Coke bottle and different things like that, and did him like a bottle stopper. The original one was a bottle stopper, and these straws are just dowels that I've cut at a 45 and painted up there. But my daughter's got the original one as a bottle stopper. But I've did several more like these. And he's fun. It's an easy carve. I can teach that in an afternoon class, or painting too. It's not. There's some little tricks and tips with doing that.
All right, Mike. Well, it looks like there's not any other questions. So just want to say thank you for coming on and sharing everything you have with us today. It's definitely something I want to go out and research and look at the plans and stuff. I may want to build one myself. It's just nice to be able to sit down and take something that you've made out of clay and turn it into a rough out that you can carve and, like you said, make it a challenge to see if you can make it look like the original clay model. So I just want to say thanks again for coming on. As usual, you did a great presentation and very valuable information. So again, check out Mike Pounders' work. You can go out and see him on Facebook. The website for the machine is woodgears.ca. So check that out. And I'm sure if you have any questions, you can reach out to Mike and he'll be happy to help you with that. So wanted to tell you all one other thing. I'm going to be out in Midway, Utah in May from the 19th through the 23rd, teaching out there at the Rocky Mountain Carvers Roundup. If you haven't signed up for that, you're going to be in the area. Come out, take classes out there. I'll be teaching 5 days of classes and would love to have you in a class. So if you get a chance, go out, sign up for that and come out and look forward to meeting you out there. Again, next week, we'll have Bruce Ankeny on. He's going to come in and do a demonstration. We'll do an auction and stuff. Then I saw Joshua Walters was in the meeting today. He's going to be coming to us on March the 1st, talking about bases and things. So look forward to that. And we will see you all next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the International Association of Woodcarvers. Thank you all.
And the
He's a
arm
professional.
perfect. I will keep that in.
No, you got to do it again. We got to have a screw up.
Okay, I could do that too. My wife was up trying to put WD-40 on my chair so it wouldn't squeak, so I might slide out of my chair.
Oh my gosh.
If it could happen, it'll happen on this meeting for sure.
Yep.
Well, you never know. We might. They're saying we need to watch out for earthquakes, so we might simulate an earthquake and things get too bad. We'll
Mike, where are you at?
North Little Rock, Arkansas.
I'm familiar with that place.
Yeah, you actually taught a lesson for us up
I
in
did.
Jacksonville.
Were you in that lesson?
I was in that lesson.